Hi, everybody, it's Craig and Arun back with your college football Saturday action. It is week 7. Yeah, where has the year gone already? This is Saturday, October 11th. Had a good week last week. We called several big upsets. So people are always like, hey, which one's your best bet? So we make it very simple. You can get in our best bet. You go over to docsports.com and you use that promo code to get 10% off. Use that promo code. This week's is Taco Win 10. IC gives out 6 to 7 plays every week. I give out 6 to 9, most weeks 7 or 8. But you can get so instead of $99, it's $89. So use that 10% off code. Get in our best bets. Those will always be where we tell you not only what we like, the reason we like it, and the unit structure. So the how to bet them is as important as the winners sometimes. Don't forget also, if you want the free $60, docsports.com/ICCT. That's for new customers. You get a free $60 to try us out as well. All right, let's kick us off early action, noon o'clock. It's noon. Miami, Ohio versus Akron in the MAC here. Miami, Ohio is favored by 10.5, total 46. What do you like here?
Well, I think a couple things here. Number one, Miami of Ohio obviously comes in as a heavy chalk, right? It's 2-3 team facing a 2-4 team. Miami of Ohio did beat Northern Illinois 25-14. It did beat Lindenwood 38-0. They had lost to UNLV and Rutgers and Wisconsin. All good losses, to be honest with you. Akron rolls in, beating Central Michigan outright as a 7.5-point dog. They had a bad loss to Toledo, but they covered against UAB and Duquesne, and they lost to Nebraska. So, the two losses that this team had was against Nebraska and Toledo, and I can't fault them for those losses, okay? So both of these teams come off of a win. They're both feeling pretty good about themselves. These two teams haven't met since 2023, and I think, they call this game the Battle of the Bricks, by the way, Craig. So bear in mind that you have a Miami of Ohio team that, by the way, the total sits at around 46 as well, and the public is on the under. I think what happens in this game is that Akron is likely an active dog. I thought Akron's offense looked pretty good against Central Michigan, to be honest with you. After only 3 points against Toledo, they did quite well in their last game. I don't fully trust Miami of Ohio coming off of 0 points against Lindenwood or giving up 0 points against Lindenwood and 14 points against Northern Illinois as well. This is a team that previously had played Mississippi State, Maryland, and so I think when you put it all together, I think what probably happens here is that this game goes over the posted total. Because after two great defensive performances, I think Miami Ohio has a letdown. And at the same time, I think Akron's going to be an active dog. So I like the over 46 here between Miami of Ohio and Akron. Craig, UCF faces Cincinnati here. UCF coming in as a 10.5 or 11.5-point dog on a total of 55. UCF, of course, coming off back-to-back losses with Scott Frost against Kansas and at Kansas State. Cincinnati, of course, is rolling now, right? They're 4-1, only lost to Nebraska. They played great against Kansas, but great against Iowa State. Who do you like?
Well, they're also 4-1 against the spread, Cincinnati, right? I mean, they've been really good for bettors. 2 straight weeks beating Kansas and Kansas State. Very impressive wins. This is a huge letdown spot. UCF team that really hasn't shown much this season. And if you're Cincinnati, you start now looking ahead. You're like, you're undefeated in league play. You play Oklahoma State, Baylor, and Utah next. So the next 2, you'd probably be favored or should win both of those. Then you face a big game at Utah 3 weeks away. So I think it's a big lookover spot. The last time they were a big favorite was against Bowling Green at home. They did not cover that spread. I think Cincinnati wins but doesn't cover. I'm taking UCF plus the points. If you like points, I think there's going to be lots of points in this one, so I'd lean towards the over as well. Next game, Charlotte and Army. Not the greatest game here. Charlotte's not looked good this year. Just 1-4. Army, not a whole lot better, just 2-3. Army's favored big, though, minus 17.5, total 46.5. What do you like here?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's always, you have a 1-4 Charlotte team and a 2-3 Army team, and the fact that Army's favored by this much is interesting. But look, South Florida's a top 25 team, right? And Charlotte lost them 26-54. Rice is a good team, and they lost them 17-28. They faced UNC and lost them 3-20. Those are not bad losses. Rice, I think, is a good team. South Florida's a top 25 team. UNC, at the end of the day, is still a Power 5 team. This team did lose to Appalachian State, and beat Monmouth. Army comes in coming off a nice win against UAB. They dominated them. They have faced some good teams this year. They faced North Texas, who, by the way, is a 1-point favorite over the number 22 ranked team, which is South Florida. They lost to ECU. They did beat Kansas State as well earlier this year, and they had a complete hiccup against Tarleton State, getting ready for Kansas State. So I think what will happen here, the Army games, by the way, are pretty high total these days. They're coming off back-to-back 57-53 totals. And Charlotte put up 26 points against South Florida, and I thought they were pretty impressive against even Rice, who has a good defense with 17 points. The total 46.5 looked interesting for the over. But I think what happens here is I just don't trust Army coming off a big win against UAB. The same team that lost to Tarleton State. Charlotte comes in coming off a pretty bad loss to South Florida, but I thought they played pretty well. I think there's a lot of points here. Remember, Charlotte was down 7-33 against South Florida, and then South Florida just kind of sat on it for a bit, and they showed up again in the fourth quarter. I really like Charlotte here. I think they can hang plus 17.5. It's not too bad. It's just a lot of value for a team that could sneak inside. Craig, Alabama, my Crimson Tide here is on the road against Missouri, who's a very good team. Keep in mind, the Missouri is undefeated, right? Missouri comes into this game as a squad that is ranked 14th in the country at 5-0. Alabama, of course, is 4-1 and ranked 8th in the country. Oh, it's interesting. Alabama comes in as a 3-point chalk on the road on a total of 51.5. Who do you like?
I'm surprised. This isn't a pick'em game, to be very honest. Missouri has been really good. Now, granted, best team they faced is, I think, Kansas. We've seen what Kansas is. I think they're a good offense. I just don't know if they're a complete team. Alabama, it's just weird how one thing can change how a trajectory of a team. That win against Georgia, now Alabama, everybody's got Alabama going to be in the playoffs after they kind of forget about that Florida State opening game. I kind of lean towards the over in this game. I think Missouri is for real, and I think they're going to score points. Alabama's going to have to outscore them to win. I don't think Alabama's shutting this team down. I think a lot of people are giving them a lot of credit for shutting down Vandy last week. I thought Vandy had some opportunities, just didn't take advantage of them. I think Missouri at home will take advantage of those. I think this screams like 30-27 type game, which gets us an easy over. Give me the over 51.5. And this Missouri offense is for real. I think you're going to see it this week. I would lean towards Missouri if you ask me who I had to take on the side, but I like the over best in this one. Toledo and Bowling Green, back to the mat for you. Toledo's really good, minus 10.5. They're for real against Eddie George and company here on the road. Total 49. What do you like here?
Yeah, look, you have Toledo obviously comes in as a 10.5 point chalk here. Toledo's 3-2, and you've been high on Toledo from the beginning. Bowling Green State is 2-3. Toledo beat Akron, 45-3 last game. They've covered 5 of 6 dating back to last year. They did lose to Western Michigan, bad loss, 13-14 as 13.5 point chalk, but beat Morgan. State beat Western Kentucky and played pretty well against Kentucky, 16-24. Bowling Green, of course, Eddie George's team. Did not cover against Ohio, lost 20-35, covered against Louisville, beat Liberty early this year, and quite frankly, played pretty well against Cincinnati, losing 20-34. So you get Bowling Green off back-to-back losses, and you get Toledo off of a big win. I think that's important to note. What I don't like is that the public is on Bowling Green State, so that makes me a little bit, queasy about taking them. And I will tell you this, Bowling Green State beat them 41-26 last year as well. I think what happens here is that, but I hate going against Bowling Green after back-to-back losses. I think Bowling Green's going to play better defense. 40 and 35 points is a lot of points for this team to give up. 75 points in the last 2 games. I think Toledo's going to come in, and I like the favorite under theory in general anyway. And I think Toledo's defense, Craig, has just been unbelievable. I mean, they've given up 17 points in their last 3 games, including they gave up 24 against Kentucky, which is impressive. I'm going to back the under here. I think that's the right angle for this game. I think it'll probably go into favor of Toledo. I lean on Toledo. I lean on the under. If I had to lean on a side, it's probably Toledo, but I like the under pretty much the same, to be honest with you. Not going to be on my card, but I think they're both pretty good leans, Toledo or the under, based on what you are more comfortable with.
What about that free $60 for new customers? Yes, you can get our absolute top plays for free if you're new. All you got to do is type into your URL, docsports.com/ICCT. As you see it on the screen, you'll get a free $60 to try us out. You can use it on anything on the website, including our top plays for the weekend. Good luck.
Greg, Pittsburgh here is on the road against FSU. Pittsburgh comes in as a 10.5 point dog on a total of 57. Think about this between Pittsburgh 3-2 on the road at FSU in this ACC tilt.
I had said, I always do the lines before they come out. I thought Florida State was in my rankings were 7.5, minus 7.5. And I would take Pitt at that 7.5 number. So you're giving me 3 extra points. I'm for sure on Pitt in this one. I think Pitt had Louisville like dead to rights, it looked like, and then they let that one get away. And because of that, now they're 3-2. If they were 4-1, they'd be like about a touchdown underdog. So I just think Florida State wasn't as good as what we thought. It was exposed the last 2 weeks. I do think Florida State wins, but I think Pitt makes it really tight on them and puts a little pressure on Florida State. Give me Pitt plus the double digits. Next game, Louisiana and James Madison. James Madison is a really good team. 17.5 points. I think ULL is better than the 2-3 record, though. Total 46.5. What do you like here?
17.5 points, a lot of points, dude. And a 2-3 team facing a 4-1 team. These two teams have no history against each other. Louisiana Lafayette obviously comes in here beating Marshall 54-51, losing to EMU 31-34, and Missouri as well, beating McNeese State, and obviously losing to Rice, right? Okay, so you got this team coming off of a win against Marshall, 54-51, mind you, which is ridiculous, 105 points scored. By the way, the total was 48. So, go back through all the handicapping that a bunch of guys and then find out who was on the over in this game and probably try to follow them in the future too. See, Craig and I are equal opportunity employers. We're just guys who like to talk shop, and we like anybody that does pretty well in any game. And we just love to analyze ball games. So, and we are pretty self-confident about ourselves because we know no one's going to give you more product than we are because we just literally do this for free. That's why we feel pretty good about ourselves. So go shop around and then come back and be like, yeah, those guys are better. As far as James Madison is concerned, look, they beat Georgia State 14-7, beat Georgia Southern 35-10. They beat Liberty. James Madison, man, the Dukes have done a great job bringing their program into Division I and doing great things. So you have a 4-1 and a 2-3 team here. Louisiana, of course, coming off a big win. James Madison is off of, beating Georgia State. So that sets the picture for you. Now, having said all that, Lafayette returns 8 offensive starters, 1 defensive starter, okay? James Madison brought in 19 transfers for 2025, all right? James Madison hired Bob Chesney a while back, right? He's got, and then, Chesney won like 7 conference titles as well. I think what happens here is this game probably – I'm shocked that this game totals at 46.5, especially since Louisiana Lafayette scored more than the total themselves in their last game. I think Lafayette shapes up on defense a little bit here. I think James Madison is known for their defense, right? They've given up a total of, 30 points in their last 3 games. James Madison is the same team that lost to Louisville by 14 points, Craig. They're a good team. And I like Louisiana coming off that nice win, but I can also see them getting crushed too. And remember, this team lost to Missouri 10-52. I think James Madison puts the thump in. They know this team is 2-3. They know this team put up 50 points last game, and I like James Madison minus the points here. Craig, UCLA off of a monster, classic James Franklin. Just classic. Like peanut butter and jelly, dude. Utter classic. They fire their coach, and he goes into UCLA and loses. Just classic. And you talked about James Franklin from the beginning. You're like, I don't trust him. From the beginning. UCLA beats them 42-37 as a 25-point dog. Wow. And then they also covered against Northwestern recently too. Maybe they found their new coach. This team is 1-4. Michigan State, of course, coming off back-to-back losses. Could this be a letdown spot for UCLA, Craig?
I love it for UCLA that they got something positive going in the building because, like you fire your coach, everything went wrong to start the season. I mean, there wasn't one thing that went right. They lost all the close games. They get slow starts. Finally, they didn't have a bad start, and see what happened. I think Michigan State is not a very good team. Nebraska, the final score wasn't really indicative of how much I thought Nebraska dominated both sides of the ball, and thus that means you're getting probably little value on a UCLA team that they come off that big win. I think Michigan State's they're the bottom 5 team in the Big Ten. I think they're going to show it this week. I'm going to take UCLA against the plus 9 points. I think there'll be a little hangover. That's to be expected. But I just don't think Michigan State's good enough to take advantage of it. So I'm going to take UCLA plus the points.
Hi, everybody. Indian Cowboy. Be sure to take advantage of our promo code TACOWIN10 because it is National Taco Day on the day that we're recording. So TACOWIN10, TACOWIN 10 gives you 10% off the season package, monthly package, and the weekly packages as well.
Next, we go back to the Big 12. Houston at Oklahoma State. Houston 4-1 on the year, but wasn't really competitive last week. Against like Texas Tech, right? They're a 14-point favorite here, total 46.5. I even see some 14.5s out there. Can they bounce back, Houston, here and get a win?
Yeah, I mean, look, you have a Houston team here, 14-point chalk, and only 27% is backing Oklahoma State. Houston, Oklahoma State beat this team 43-30 this year. Obviously, this is a regional tilt as well. Houston is 4-1. Oklahoma State is 1-4. Houston lost to Texas Tech 11-35. Bad loss for them. Worst loss of the year and coming off their first loss overall. And then Oklahoma State, of course, lost to Arizona 13-41. It just might be a horrible year for them. And then this team, of course, lost to Baylor and Tulsa prior to that. The total was what's interesting, sitting at 46.5. I think what happens here is that this game has a decent chance. The question is, how does Houston respond after a loss, right? And as they come off an 11-35 loss, I think they're going to play pretty good defense, to be honest with you. That's the most amount of points they've given up all year. 46.5 points is one of the lowest totals that they've had, too. Certainly the lowest total that Oklahoma State has had after back-to-back losses against Baylor and Arizona, 45 and 41 points. I think they'll play much better defense for both these teams. This is the lowest total that Oklahoma State has faced all year. It's hard for me to go against Oklahoma State, too, because at some point this team is going to figure out what their offensive scheme is with their new coaching. I like the under between Houston and Oklahoma State today. Or this weekend. Craig, Stanford here facing SMU. Stanford coming in as a solid 19.5-point dog. They are 2-3, facing a 3-2 team here. Stanford coming off that big win against San Jose State, but didn't cover. SMU beating Syracuse 31-18, but they also did not cover. And losers of 7 straight ATS as well. Who do you like, Craig?
I mean, 1-4 against the spread to Stanford, 0-5 SMU. So it's like they've burned a lot of money that if you're a bettor, that's back them each week. I think San Jose State's better than what people gave them credit for. So I thought that was a pretty quality win. They had a week off. Now they're facing an SMU team that I thought got all the breaks last year. They haven't caught those breaks this year. They only beat Missouri State by like 18 or 17 earlier this year. Didn't cover that game. Missouri State is not as good as Stanford, even though Stanford isn't as talented as I think they will be in a few years, with Andrew Luck kind of leaning behind the scenes there. I'm going to take the points here. I just think SMU is not that good. They shouldn't be laying 19.5 points against many teams this year, especially an ACC that's, I think a little wide open this year. It's like, the haves and have-nots a little bit. Some people look at it that way. As far as these big numbers, I don't think so. Next game, Ohio State at Illinois. Fox Game Day back to Illinois for second week in 3 weeks. Ohio State looks like they're for real again. 4-1 against 4-0-1 against the spread. They have one push, 5-0 straight up. Ohio State's favored by 14, total 15.5. Which Illinois team do we see? The one that beat Indiana or lost or got smashed by Indiana, or the one that beat USC the following week? Which one do you think?
No, I really believe in coaches. As you know, we've done a lot of videos together now, and I really believe in the importance of a coach. I think the coach is probably more important than players sometimes. I mean, look, when you had to choose on Vanderbilt, is Vanderbilt going to be good? Were you like, oh, those Vanderbilt players are getting better this year, so that must mean the Vanderbilt's going to be better? No, the coach is what makes a huge difference. And I think the coaching chops of Brett Bielema is as good as anybody, to be honest with you. So I think what you have here is Illinois returned 82% of its starters from last year, and I think that's hard to ignore. Brett Bielema has been there for about 4 to 5 years. You have Ohio State obviously has individual talent, capability, but Ohio State have they really been challenged? Washington, we realized, can be a little fidgety, and they ended up winning 24-6 in that game, which was a game that Ohio State was only up 7-3 at the half. And they come off a big win against Minnesota, and they played much better. But Illinois, yes, they lost to Indiana, but Illinois knows they don't have a quality win. They beat USC at home. They beat Duke as well. I think this is a dangerous game for Ohio State. I do. And I know they come in as a 2-touchdown dog or 2-touchdown favorite. I can easily see Illinois stepping up here. This won't be on my card, but I can't go against Brett Bielema in this situation. I think it's a lot of points, and I think they're going to be rocking there. What has Ohio State really showed us? I think Alabama's wins are better than Ohio State's, to be quite honest with you. There are a lot of teams that have better wins than Ohio State, so I'm going to back Illinois here. Craig, Washington State comes in as a 32.5 dog, 32.5-point dog to Ole Miss here. Lane Kiffin is becoming one of the most favorite people for people to interview, and he's becoming the whole thing about his daughter dating the LSU kid and him throwing up on the sideline. And as they run a fast-paced offense on that kid, Lane Kiffin has become very likable. He's become extremely likable, which is great. So now Washington State, of course, comes off that big win against Colorado State as a 5.5-point dog. Ole Miss, of course, comes off that nice win against LSU, huge win, so 3 straight covers. And who do you think pulls it out here? I just want you to know that Ole Miss, of course, does have UGA on deck.
Yeah, this is one of the biggest sandwich spots of the year. The win against LSU, very impressive. Tulane even was impressive. Tulane's not a bad team. And now you face a bad Washington State team with Georgia, like you said, on deck next week. This is handicapper 101 is the sandwich games is like something you circle. There wasn't a bigger sandwich game, I didn't think, on the schedule this week. I think you have to take Washington State. I know they haven't been good. I've told you how bad they were all season long. But it's 32.5 points. Like, that is a ton of points. I think there's two ways I'd play this game. I would take the 32.5. I also think you take the plus 45.5 as far as team total for Ole Miss. I think they score 50. But the problem is I think their defense will give up plenty in between as they're looking ahead. So that's what I would play in this game. This isn't a game that you should be playing a lot of points. Anytime you see four and a half touchdowns, you should probably be staying pretty far away from these type of games. NIU at Eastern Michigan in the MAC. Not the greatest game. Eastern Michigan just one win on the year. And NIU, newsflash, one win on the year. Northern Illinois is favored by 1.5, total 48.5. What do you like here?
Yeah, I mean, you have a situation here where NIU comes in as a favorite, and NIU hasn't been favored over a lot of games, right? They're 1-4, and EMU is 1-5. These two teams met in 2023, so no direct relevance here. But NIU has faced a pretty tough schedule. They lost to Maryland 9-20, lost to Mississippi State 10-38, lost to San Diego State, is a pretty good team, lost to Miami of Ohio, is a pretty good team. I mean, that's as tough as you can go, kind of. And then you have Eastern Michigan here, who did lose to Kentucky, but then they played Lafayette and then lost to Central Michigan and Buffalo. Decent teams, but I think the difference here is that NIU it has a pretty decent defense, but they just can't score. Eastern Michigan can score with relative ease. I mean, you put up 23 on Kentucky and 30 on Buffalo. That's pretty impressive. So I think what happens here is that I just like the fact that Eastern Michigan that can score, dude. I know NIU has played a tougher competition, but I like teams that can score, and I think Eastern Michigan plus the 1.5 makes some sense here because it's a problem if you can't score, Craig. The best you can do is tie. So. And that's 0-0. So I'm going to take Eastern Michigan plus the 1.5. Craig, UMass here plus the 3 against Kent State on the road here. UMass is 0-5, but only a 3-point dog. Kent State, of course, is 1-4. So Kent State, of course, comes off that tough loss to Oklahoma, 0-44, and the game before they played against FSU, 10-66. Nice to win, nice to lose those games and collect some nice checks for your school is what's really going on there. So I don't mind players at all getting NIL money sometimes. Because they're basically sacrificing their bodies for an education and to build more buildings in their school. UMass coming off a 3-21 loss to Western Michigan. Who do you like, Craig?
Very simple. UMass is bottom 5 team in college football. Bottom 5. They have not done much this season that gives you any hope. Kent State's played really good teams, so it looks very lopsided, and they were lopsided games. Kent State offense, I think, will move the ball here. Give me Kent State -3. I think they put up 27 points. I can't see UMass getting above 20. So Kent State gets the cover in this one -3. Next, don't forget about the premium products we have at YouTube. We have 3 levels of premium. Level 1 is Lenny's video every day, $4.99. Plus, you get early access to all the football. And we do some live content that's exclusive to our members. Level 2 is Indian Cowboy, where you get extra plays from Indian Cowboy every day, video format. And you can talk to them back and forth. And then level 3, you get all 3 levels. Level 2, you actually get level 1 as well. So you get all 3 levels as you move up, and you get 3 expert plays every day from Doc Sports experts, one of them being from me. So make sure you check that out. Very simple, $49.99 a month for the level 3. Game, Air Force at UNLV. UNLV's look great, 5-0. 6.5-point favorite here at home, total 67. What do you like here?
Well, Air Force, this should have been my 8-star, Craig. Last week, I had Air Force. It was one of my 6 plays. I just didn't make it an 8-star. They were a 13.5-point dog going in, and they ended up losing 31-34. And they were in it the whole way. And so what I like about this game is the fact that Air Force has now lost 3 straight. They lost to Boise State, lost to Utah State, played Hawaii, and lost by 3 points to Navy. UNLV rolls in, beating Wyoming, and they covered, beating Miami of Ohio, beating UCLA, beating Sam Houston. So Dan Mullen got an opportunity, and he's certainly making the most of it, right? Which is hilarious because they're still not ranked yet, but they're getting some votes, right? They're getting some votes to be up there. They haven't really played anybody. But this could be a little tricky spot for them. I want you to know that the total sits at 67 as well, which is quite high. And I think what happens here is Air Force can score. This team put up 37 on Boise State. You cannot ignore that. This team put up 30 on Utah State. Can't ignore that. They put up, 31 against Navy. Can't ignore that, considering Navy is 5-0 as well, right? So you have to, and one of those wins is against Tulsa. So I think what happens here is that UNLV is going to get challenged. 31 points is still the second lowest total that they've had all year long and scoring-wise. the last time UNLV faced a 68 total was against Idaho State, which was one of my plays, and the final was 38-31. Air Force, of course, has not faced a 68 total all year, too. I think the only thing that makes sense to me is the over 67 between Air Force and UNLV, especially if Air Force is going to be an active dog in this game. Craig, Wake Forest rolls in as a 3-point favorite on the road against Oregon State. Wake, do remember that Wake is 3-2. Oregon State is 0-6, coming off that loss to App State. Wake Forest, of course, coming off a huge win against Virginia Tech, winning 30-23 on the road. And they played Georgia Tech tough, right? Losing by 1 point in the game prior to that. Who do you like?
I love Wake here. Was one of the picks last week I said in the thing. I thought they'd win outright. They really were never outside of the number, and they were winning most of the game. Oregon State, because they played Houston when Houston was looking on a midweek game, they were looking ahead to that big Texas Tech matchup, and they almost beat them. Problem is, then they followed it up. App State's not great this year, and they couldn't handle App State. I just think Wake Forest is a much better team. I'm going to lay the -3 here. I think they take care of business. I think Oregon State potentially, you look at the rest of their schedule, they could go winless this year. So I'm going to take Wake -3. Next game, I think it's a good matchup here. Iowa State at Colorado. Iowa State lost that game last week at Cincinnati. So some people are like, listen, the way the Big 12 is, they went out, they're going to end up in the Big 12 championship game, and they'll end up if they win that, they'll end up in the playoffs. So everything's in front of them. Colorado's a team that they need to win. If you look at they could miss the bowl this year. If you look at their schedule, pretty tough schedule. They're only a 3-point underdog at home, total 52. What do you like here?
Yeah, I mean, you have Iowa State. I thought they would be favored by more here, but I mean, maybe Iowa State starts dropping now, right? They're 21st in the country. You have the Cyclones here because Iowa State was kind of shaky coming in, Craig, because their only true win. And I don't know. I don't want to knock the Arizona win because Arizona is 4-1. But Arizona, of course, outside of Houston, hadn't really beaten anybody. But Iowa State losing, Cincinnati was one of my plays last week too. So Iowa State, did beat Iowa, did beat Arizona. I give them credit for that. And Colorado, of course, comes off that loss to TCU and against BYU. But I feel like Colorado's getting better, dude. I just do. They're 2-4. Iowa State is 5-1. These two teams haven't played since 2010. And the question is, can Iowa State, how do they just got beat? How do they hang? How do they feel like they just got beaten? How do they respond to that? That's the bigger question here. I think the total says something here. Normally Iowa State games these days are high 40s and low 50s. Colorado games are, mid to high 40s as well. This one comes in at 52. I think this is a dangerous game for Iowa State. They could bounce back, but I don't know. I like Colorado off that back-to-back loss, and I think they're playing better. And they almost beat BYU as well. I'm taking Colorado here. And Colorado's a tough place to play now, man. Boulder's rocking these days. So taking Colorado is a fantastic public fade. Craig, Virginia Tech, 15-point dog against Georgia Tech, who is undefeated. But Georgia Tech, by the way, has now climbed to 13th in the nation. The Hokies here come in. Pretty impressive, right? They had obviously a coaching change. They lost to Wake Forest recently. Georgia Tech, of course, winning 5 in a row. They didn't play well against Wake last week. 1-1 is 13.5-point chalk. They didn't cover against Temple either. Who do you like, Craig?
Yeah, both these teams played Wake the last 2 weeks. Good. They needed the week off, did Georgia Tech. But I think we saw one thing. Georgia Tech doesn't have a ridiculous talent. It's not like you're in the top 10 and they're doing it because they just got better Jimmys and Joes. They're a very well-coached team, but the margin for victory for them compared to almost every team around them in the top 20 isn't like as great. And so you have to give respect to that's a great coaching job, but it's also one of those teams you probably shouldn't be laying more than 2 touchdowns. And Virginia Tech is probably better than what their record suggests, 2-4. They had some bad losses. They just didn't play well. I think this is a game they play a lot better. You see a team that's in the top 10. They have no pressure on them. Virginia Tech goes in there. I think they put a little scare into Georgia Tech. Let's take Virginia Tech plus the 15. Another Big 12 matchup here, TCU at Kansas State. Kansas State, I mean, they've had some tough losses. I did like them last week. They were one of my picks. They did cover. They should have probably won that game, but they finding ways to lose. Kansas State favored by 1, though, in this matchup. Total 56.5. What do you like?
Yeah, I thought the first thing that I thought was that Kansas City was favored, right? The fact that they're favored and only backed by 28% of the public. TCU coming off a nice win against Colorado, did lose to Arizona State, beat SMU. Those are their top spots. And that UNC win is not that impressive now. Kansas State, of course, losing to Baylor 34-35, but they did beat USC or UCF rather, and lost to Arizona and Army. Not bad losses, but they've had some really, really tough losses. I was impressed with how Kansas State played against Baylor. I mean, they were actually up 31-17 going into the fourth quarter, and they got outscored 18-3, which was bad. And I think that was bad. But the fact that they passed for 339 was significant. They ran for 162. They were able to run the ball there on a good Baylor team, right? And I thought that was impressive. Baylor was coming into that game 4-2, and Baylor's the same team that beat Cincinnati, that beat UCF, and Kansas State had them on the ropes. I think it makes sense here. I think Kansas State, the fact that Kansas State can run the ball, I think it's significant, and I'm back in Kansas State here. Craig, Northwestern here, 21-point dog to Penn State. What else can we say about Penn State besides the James Franklin effect? Dude, and did Penn State, did they drop? I mean, they dropped out of the top 25 poll for the AP top 25, and in another poll they're sitting at 22. This is a team that many thought was number 2 in the nation against Ohio State, and they just dropped like a bad habit, man. So this team is Northwestern coming in here. Northwestern beat UCLA, by the way, 17-14, and they also beat UL Monroe 42-7 back-to-back wins. Penn State, of course, has not had a quality win this year, Craig. They lost to Oregon, they lost to UCLA. Their wins are only against Nevada, FIU, and Villanova. Who do you like?
James Franklin job is on the line, and it ain't going to be good enough to just win this game. Like, they got to win and win big. You got to change the narrative a little bit around Happy Valley. You can't be like just barely beat Northwestern. This is not a good Northwestern team. And, it's the first time ever that the top 2 teams in the nation, Texas and Penn State, were ranked number 1 and 2, are out of the top 25 at this point of the year. So, I mean, it's pretty surprising what has fallen. But, I mean, how things could have changed. It's the what ifs. They could have beat Penn State. They had them in overtime. If they win that game, they probably go in and they probably beat UCLA because they wouldn't have had any letdown. That's what happens. These young kids, I think they lay the wood this week. Penn State minus 21. I also think the over. I think Penn State might get the over by themselves. Penn State minus the points, though, is the stronger play. Nebraska at Maryland. Nebraska, they have one loss, and it's to Michigan, and it was pretty close. Nebraska is favored by 6.5 against Maryland that barely lost to Washington at home last week. Total 47. What do you like here?
Yeah, I mean, like I've been, first of all, let's give credit where credit's due with Nebraska. They were, this is a team that's program got turned around. They're quietly 4-1 now, and they're getting some rankings. They're getting some love here to getting into the rankings, and so that's good for them. I mean, and Maryland too. This was a team that was not really well respected, and they weren't really going anywhere. Now both these teams are 4-1, and Maryland, of course, lost to Washington, had them on the ropes, and then they fell short. And then you have a Nebraska team here who just beat Michigan State, but didn't cover though. Did lose to Michigan 27-30. I think what happens here, I think Maryland is going to be hungover, dude, coming into this game. I think Maryland is really disappointed from losing to Washington, and that's going to affect them. And then you have a Nebraska team here who, they have not beaten Maryland, by the way, since 2019. Nebraska also does not, keep in mind that Nebraska, they did face Cincinnati earlier this year, 120-17, but they've had 4 straight home games too. I think what happens here, can Maryland bounce back? Sure. But I feel like what happened here with Nebraska, especially with Nebraska having to come all the way back, sort of, they were tied 21-all against Michigan State, and then they had to put up a 17-6 fourth quarter. And if you looked at that game, it was wild. Nebraska only rushed for 67 yards in that game, and they didn't play well. I mean, they almost lost to a quarterback who threw for 9 for 23 for 85 yards. I think what happens here is Nebraska probably gets it done here, and I think people are a little too high on Maryland.
Hi, everybody. Don't forget, use that 10% off. All existing customers, I work for new customers as well. 10% off all of our single plays, our week pass, or even the full season passes. 10% off Taco Win 10. So TACOWIN 10 as it is on the screen. Good luck.
Craig, NC State here plus 22.5-point dog against Notre Dame. And, we talked about how quickly tides change. Notre Dame sits at 3-2 now. But obviously they've fought all the way back, right? NC State, beat Campbell 56-10. That was on my card, by the way. I thought you'd be impressed with that as I went against the Campbells. Notre Dame, of course, comes into this game. Big win against Boise State. They pushed. They beat Arkansas. They beat Purdue. You have a Notre Dame team that beat them 45-24 recently, a couple of years ago. And what do you think about this? I think Notre Dame, it's a lot of points as they face an ACC team here. NC State did lose by 12 to Duke. What do you like here?
Yeah, I mean, you go from 0-2. They win this game, which they're going to be favored. USC, Navy, somebody else, I forget. They're going to be favored in all those games. They're going to end up 7-2. Very good chance this team ends up with a couple of games left, where if they run the table, probably going to end up back in the playoffs. I just think it's a little too many points this week. Their defense looked a little better the last 2 weeks against Arkansas and against Boise. I think NC State's got a better offense. And I do think Notre Dame's they were scoring a bunch of points. In some of those games, they were exposing their defense. I think they're hey, let's slow down a little bit, use our run game, control the clock a little more. And when you do that, that's tough to cover these big type numbers unless you score on defense or special teams. I don't think they do that this week. NC State plus 22.5. Notre Dame wins, probably wins impressively, but I think NC State squeaks out the cover. Next game, App State coming off a good win that they really needed against Georgia State here. I was kind of figured App State would be bigger favorite. They're minus 2.5, total 56.5. What do you like in this one?
Yeah, I like the fact that App State played, Boise State earlier this year and lost 14-47. They did, of course, beat Oregon State. Georgia State comes into this game beating James Madison 7-4. I'm sorry, losing to James Madison 7-14, but a good game, right? I mean, they covered as a 20-point dog. They'd just come off losing to Vanderbilt 21-70, and then they showed some heart there. Actually, if you look at Georgia State, they don't have horrible losses, Craig. I mean, they played tough teams, right? They played Ole Miss, losing 7-63. They lost to Memphis 16-38, who I believe is ranked top 25. Yeah, they're ranked 23rd. So you have a team that Georgia State, in their defense, lost to the 4th-ranked team in the country in Ole Miss 7-63. Lost to the number 22 team in the country in Memphis 16-38. Lost to Vanderbilt 21-70, who's a top 13 team in the country. So these aren't bad losses. I mean, they faced 3 top 25 teams, and of course they beat Murray State. So the only bad loss was to James Madison. I mean, and that's not even a bad loss either. So one can argue that they don't have any bad losses. App State, of course, has not played. They played Lindenwood and beat them by a touchdown. Why can't Georgia State win this game? They lost 33-26 last year, too. I can see Georgia State plus the 2.5, and I can see why this line is the way it is. And I'm going to back Georgia State here. Craig, Old Dominion here facing Marshall as a 14.5-point favorite on a total of 55. What I can tell you about this is Old Dominion, of course, comes off Old Dominion has won 4 in a row. They beat NCCU. They beat Vatech on the road. That got their coach fired. They beat Liberty and then Coastal Carolina. Marshall comes in here not playing bad. I mean, with their new coach, despite what they did to Huff, their new coach is doing quite well. They're 2-3. They lost Louisiana Lafayette 51-54 last game, coming in as a 6.5-point dog. Marshall did win by a touchdown last year. Who do you like?
Love the over. Over. Both these teams have put up some big numbers this year and given up a fair share. Let's remember this ODU team was the reason why Virginia Tech moved on from their coach. Nice win at Virginia Tech, put up 45, I think it was, 45-21 or something like that. Now, I don't think they'll maybe score 45 this week. We won't need them to. I think if they just score 40, we get this over. I think ODU's a pretty good team, and I think they show it at Marshall. I think they put up in the neighborhood of 40-42. That'll get us the over. Take the over in this one. Really, really good matchup here. 3:30 Eastern Standard Time. Indiana undefeated. Oregon undefeated. Oregon's at home. It's a 7-point favorite, total of 55. Google me, as they say at Indiana.
Yeah, look, I mean, are we really that surprised that Indiana's a touchdown dog here? No, Oregon's the number 2 team in the country. One can even argue it's a little bit of disrespect for Oregon, to be honest with you. I know the public's on Indiana, but I'm not buying it. Sometimes I look at these consensus polls and I don't buy it. It's like, oh, the public's 55% on Indiana. I don't think so. I think I could easily see this. I mean, in my own mind, I can easily see 70% of the public taking Oregon minus the touchdown. The common public, not the wiser public, if you will. Indiana didn't have a great game against Iowa either. They didn't cover that game. Maybe they were a little flat coming in. Looking forward to this game, right? Indiana rushed for 104 yards last game. Their quarterback played blah, sort of 13 for 23, 233 yards. Mendoza 2 touchdowns and 1 pick. Oregon, beat Penn State. Could be a letdown spot for them. They did beat Northwestern. They beat Oklahoma State. Really, Craig, Oregon has not played anybody except Penn State. And even that looks questionable because they're out of the top 25. I think this is a dangerous game for Oregon, right? This is the type of stuff that Google Me Coach looks forward to. I like Indiana in this game, all right? And you might not even need the points. I like Indiana in this game, and I will tell you that Indiana has Rutgers on deck, of course. Oregon, I think, has let me make sure here, but I believe Oregon had they don't have like a major team on deck either, as far as I remember. So, Oregon's next game is Rutgers and Wisconsin, and then Indiana, of course, next game is Michigan State. Yeah, I like Indiana plus the points here. All right, Craig. Next up, as we continue in the 3:30 hours, Oklahoma, a 2.5-point dog to Texas, Seems like a little disrespect. The number 6 team in the country who is undefeated is a dog. And of course, Texas is not ranked, right? So Oklahoma is 5-0. How quickly tides change. Their impressive wins are against Auburn and Michigan. Texas, of course, comes into this game losing to Florida on the road, bad loss. Losing to Ohio State by a touchdown, not so bad loss. The crazy thing is if Texas wins against Florida, they're probably in the top 15 still because their only loss was to Ohio State. Who do you like?
Mateer, the quarterback for Oklahoma, it sounds like he's lobbying to play this game. We'll see if he goes. I would wait till game time. If he plays, I'm definitely taking Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma's they have the better defense, I think, slightly. And I think Mateer is a better quarterback than Manning. Manning's just not been, he was the Heisman favorite coming in. He's not even close. He's not even on a ballot this year. Will he play better? Yeah, I think he has a better. He'll play better than what he's looked so far. I just think Oklahoma's the better team if Mateer plays. If he doesn't, I would take the under in this game. If he plays, I would take Oklahoma and not the under halfway.
Craig and I love doing videos for you every week. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you get all of our videos every single time when you post it, so you get the best lines. As soon as we post it, people jump on it. So if you want to get it as soon as we post it, like and subscribe.
Next game, we'll go back to the MAC. We'll go through some of these games a little quicker as we go on because trying to keep this about an hour. We do listen to your guys' comments, so we try to keep it about an hour. Ball State at Western Michigan's had, I think they had a big win. I think it was Toledo, big upset. So they've shown their prowess so far in the MAC. They're favored by 8 here, total 43.5. What do you like?
Yeah, Ball State comes in 8-point dog, right? Beating Ohio 20-14 in their last game. So they are 2-3. Western Michigan is 3-3. Western Michigan obviously comes off of a win against Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Toledo. And then, Western Michigan crushed this team 45-42. Beat this team 45-42 last year and 42-24 the year before as well. So they beat them in the last 3 years, right? But I got to tell you something. Ball State beating Ohio is a big deal. Ball State, playing Auburn competitively I thought was a pretty good deal too. And, you have a Ball State team that, covered against New Hampshire. They've covered 4 straight in a row. And they almost beat Connecticut, losing 25-31. I think they're going to be a pretty good dog here, Craig. I like them plus the 8 here on the total of 43.5. Craig, Navy rolls in as a minus 9.5-point chalk, barely beating their rival Air Force by 3. They are facing Temple here on a total of 52.5. Who do you like?
Well, if Navy would have won lopsided, this line would be probably 13.5 points. But because they struggled against a rival, now people are like, oh, maybe Navy's not as good as thought. No, it's rival. You just throw the records out the window in rivalries. Navy minus 9.5. They go to Temple and I think put a whooping on them. I think Temple's just an average team. I think Navy's pretty good. And Navy, I believe they play FAU next week. Then they play North Texas, which North Texas is a big game. They're undefeated. And then they play Notre Dame. So it's like Navy has some big games coming up. But next week it's FAU, so it's like this. I don't think they're looking ahead for FAU. Navy minus 9.5. A good SEC matchup here. Arkansas, I think, is better than their 2-3 record. Obviously, new coach, interim coach. If it gets a Tennessee team that's still 4-1, got everything in front of them. Tennessee minus 12.5, total 69. Can Arkansas find a way to get a big win?
I think Arkansas is going to do well in this game. Yeah, I do. Arkansas coming off that bad loss to Notre Dame, 13-56, but that was a game that Notre Dame really needed to put us. They needed to destroy a middle of the tier SEC team, a grade 8 star, if you will. Right? This was a team that was going to be set up well, and that loss against Memphis looks pretty good, Craig. Memphis is top 25. That loss against Ole Miss looks pretty good. Losing by 6 to number 4 ranked team in the country. Maybe Sam Pittman got fired a little too early and based off one loss. This team is 2-3. Tennessee, all right, they beat Mississippi State on the road. They didn't cover. They didn't lose. They didn't beat UGA. Who have they beat? They beat Syracuse by 19. Who have they beat? I love Arkansas here. You get them off of a bye week too, I believe, right? You get them off of a bye week. Their last game was September 27th, so they've had some time. They completely rehauled their entire defensive staff as Petrino comes in. Looks like his face is okay from the motorcycle crash from years ago. So he comes in and he completely rehauls their entire staff, and he's an offensive-minded coach, so he can go toe-to-toe with Josh Heupel as far as calling plays. I like Arkansas here, man. All right, Craig, UAB plus 4.5-point dog against FAU. Can a dragon put fire on an owl if you want to do a mascot contest? UAB losing to Army 13-31 and Tennessee 24-56, coming off back-to-back losses. They are 2-3. FAU is also 2-3. But coming off a big win against Rice, who do you like?
Yeah, that was a good win against Rice. It's really of these two teams, the only one with I would say, an average to be, they beat a decent team. At least what we think. You just don't know until the end of the year you get the entire resumes. But I think Rice is not a terrible team, so I like that win. I don't know. UAB, Trent Dilfer, I think, is probably going to get fired after this year. It's just like it's the same team as it was the last few years. It's just they don't have a lot on defense. I mean, Army's not a good team this year. And Army did whatever they wanted to do. For that reason, I'm taking FAU minus 4.5. I just think the Trent Dilfer experiment has not worked. Iowa at Wisconsin here in the Big Ten. Iowa favored by 3. Total of 36.5. What a total. Coach Luke Fickell is on. I mean, the hot seat can't get any hotter. This is an absolute must-win. If he doesn't win this game, I just don't think that, unless they're just going to let him just work the year out and then fire him at the end of the year. What do you like here?
Yeah, 3-2 versus a 2-3 team. Iowa comes off that loss to Indiana, which looks pretty good right now. That's a pretty good loss, losing 15-20, beating Rutgers 38-28, beating Massachusetts, losing Iowa State, not a bad loss. And then this team played Missouri really tough last year too, which was impressive. And Iowa beat them 42-10 last year, though. I mean, it's the same system, same coaches. Wisconsin, of course, did cover against Michigan 10-24, but that could have been one of those games where Michigan just sort of maybe let up a little bit late. But Wisconsin, lost to Maryland as well. But in their defense, let me try to defend them here. That Miami of Ohio win actually looks pretty good now. That 17-0 win, that Miami of Ohio didn't turn out to be a bad team. Middle Tennessee State, not bad either. Alabama, of course, lost, but Alabama's now ranked 8th in the country. And, of course, losing to Maryland didn't look so bad. It's not like I'm trying to back Wisconsin here, but you're right. I can see Wisconsin, and they're both similar teams, right? So it's not like this Iowa team has so much offensive powerhouse weapons and blah, blah, blah. They run kind of the same system. I'm taking Wisconsin here, plus the points here. I think they can win this game. And quite possibly, this is obviously a coach fighting for his job here. And remember, Iowa's not ranked either. So I'm back in Wisconsin here, plus the points. Quick, Louisiana Monroe here, -3 on the road against Coastal Carolina on a total of 44. Louisiana Monroe off of a bad loss to Northwestern, and Coastal Carolina off of a bad loss to Old Dominion. Who do you like?
2 games back, I thought maybe Coastal Carolina put it back together. They beat South Alabama at South Alabama. I don't think they're a bad team. But then they follow it up. And ODU is a good team. Old Dominion's really good. But 47-7, I don't know. But then, UL and Monroe, Northwestern's not good. And they lost by 35 at Northwestern. I guess you have to take the underdog at home. I don't think either one of these teams probably should be favored on the road this year. So give me Coastal Carolina +3. Small play. Don't go crazy in this one. Next.
Hi, everybody. Indian Cowboy. Be sure to take advantage of our promo code TACOWIN10 because it is National Taco Day on the day that we're recording. So TACOWIN10, TACOWIN 10 gives you 10% off the season package, monthly package, and the weekly packages as well.
Next game, I think, is a good San Jose State team. They're -2.5 on the road against Wyoming. Total 49.5. What do you like here?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is both these teams are 2-3, and San Jose State did beat New Mexico. They lost to Stanford in a game they could have won. They played Texas pretty tough, and they lost to Central Michigan. All decent losses, to be honest. Wyoming comes in off of a loss to UNLV, pretty good loss. Lost to Colorado, lost to Utah, all good losses in my book. So then what you have is, they lost. San Jose State beat this team 24-14 last year. So it comes down to which coaching staff you're more comfortable with, which is why this game is basically a pick 'em at this point. What I'll tell you is that the Cowboys average around 19 points per game. Defensively, you have you have 2 coaches here. One is offensive minded. The Navy former Coach Ken used to be a former offensive coordinator, right? And then he was a head coach at Navy. He was Navy's longest serving coach ever over there. And then you have a Wyoming coach that's mainly a defensive coordinator coming in too on a total of 49.5. I think what happens here is that San Jose State obviously, can score a lot of points, right? But Wyoming comes off, 3 straight losses. They have to improve their offense. But they played 3 really good defenses. And I think this game goes over the posted total, Wyoming being an active dog. Greg, Florida comes in as a 7.5-point dog against Texas A&M. Billy Napier saved his job once again, it seems. Florida's 2-3, playing some really good competition. A&M, of course, beat Mississippi State, Auburn, Notre Dame, Utah State. They are 5-0. And they're also number 5 in the country as well. And in fact, they got 1 vote as the number 1 team in the country, actually. Who do you like, Craig, here?
That must be a Texas A&M alum that's got them. I think Texas A&M is the most flawed of the top of the undefeated teams. Let's just say that. Now, you are what your record are at this point of the year. But let's remember, Florida, I think he had like 5 turnovers, Lagway did, at LSU, and still had a chance to win that game. This past week, he finally only had 1 interception, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, threw for like 298 yards. If he does that this week, they're a live underdog. And I think you take Florida here plus the points. It tells you that this number's off, 7.5. A lot of people thought this line should be 9.5. I was like, nuh-uh. This is a good Florida team. They have good talent, and they just need to avoid turnovers. I think they do that this week again, and I think Florida is a live underdog to win this game outright. Next game, Purdue at Minnesota. Minnesota's favored by 8, total 51. This is not going to be a high-scoring game. I can almost guarantee that when Minnesota's involved. What do you like?
Purdue's trying to slowly turn their program around, but obviously, losing to USC, Notre Dame, and Illinois, they have basically lost by 17 to 21 points in each one of those games. Not bad. Minnesota, of course, comes off their worst loss of the year, losing 3-42 against Ohio State. I guess the boat didn't row there, but they did beat Rutgers, and they did beat Buffalo early this year. They are 3-2, and so Purdue beat this team 2 years ago, 49-30. It's an interesting game because Minnesota does come off its worst loss of the year, but Purdue has been pretty competitive, in all honesty. What I think happens here is Purdue has given up close to almost 100 points in their last 3 games. They'll play better defense. And I like the fact that Minnesota gave up 42 points in their last game, too. I think they're going to bounce back. It's a team that only gave up 27 to Cal and 10 points to Buffalo. I like this game to go under the posted total, Craig, between these two. Craig, Clemson coming in as a 14.5-point chalk on the road against Buffalo. They didn't fire our buddy here in Dabo. They did beat UNC and got it done 38-10. They lost to Syracuse and Georgia Tech, but that Georgia Tech loss looks pretty good. That LSU loss still looks pretty good in my opinion. LSU is still ranked 11th in the country, so that's not bad either. Maybe we were a little harsh on this team. That Syracuse loss was unacceptable, though, but maybe they were just hungover from losing to Georgia Tech, who now is actually the 13th ranked team in the country. Boston College coming off a 7-48 loss against Pittsburgh, their worst loss of the year. Who do you like?
BC's just not good. I mean, they're just not good. Look who they've lost to. I mean, they've played Michigan State's not a great team. Cal, right? Like these are teams they should be able to be in the same league with. They're just not, and they're not in Clemson's league. And Clemson can't overlook anybody anymore. They got to win out. 1, to keep Dabo's job probably, and 2, to all these guys are they're only at Clemson to win championship. You're not there to freaking just beat Boston College on the road. You're in there to compete for top level type of talent. I think Clemson is still rallying the troops. Give me Clemson minus 14.5. A good game here, Michigan at USC. USC, they couldn't get it done last week at Illinois. Illinois, like I said, was they needed that win a lot more than USC did. USC's favored by 2.5, total 57. What do you like?
A little surprised. USC is a little favorite, right? Michigan is ranked 15th in the country, and USC is not a top 25 team. But Michigan comes in, and they didn't play well against Wisconsin either. But they did beat Nebraska. That loss to Oklahoma doesn't look bad at all now, right? Oklahoma's up 14-0. Michigan did come back, but it just wasn't enough. And so then you have a USC team that lost to Illinois that's going to be motivated. And that was their first loss of the year, to their credit. They just haven't beaten anybody yet. But now USC is looking to try to, quote-unquote, beat somebody. And maybe it is this Michigan team. I have continued to be surprised by how well Michigan continues to be coached. I didn't think they were going to be as good with Harbaugh leaving, but they haven't skipped that much of a beat. I've been pretty impressed with that. The total does sit at 57, which is a high total for any Michigan game. Just to give you an example, Craig, the highest total that when Michigan has last faced a Division I team is usually 43 to 47 points. So now USC comes in. The last couple have gone over for them. The over 55 and over 61.5. I got to go with Michigan, man. I think USC jumps out early, but then I think Michigan just puts the stranglehold and comes back. Remember, Michigan came all the way back, or Michigan didn't play well last week because they were probably getting ready for this game. So give me Michigan. Craig, Kansas here, 14-point dog to Texas Tech here. Total of 59. Kansas is 4-2. And, of course, Texas Tech. And, of course, I'll tell you, Kansas did beat UCF on the road. Not a bad loss to Missouri or Cincinnati. Texas Tech, of course, is perfectly 5-0, beating Houston and covering their last 3 in a row as well. And I will be remiss if I didn't tell you Texas Tech is a top 10 team. Who do you like?
I like the over in this game. Kansas defense isn't good. I mean, Cincinnati did whatever they wanted. Really, UCF last week for a deep offense that's not great scored 20. I just think this screams over. Texas Tech's for real. Texas Tech can do whatever they want. They can beat you running the ball, passing the ball. They got a good, decent, way better defense than what the people would ever know. But I think against Kansas, it doesn't matter. That dual threat, Daniels and company, their offense can move it against anybody. They just can't stop anybody. Give me the over 59 Kansas and Texas Tech and what I think is an old-fashioned Big 12 shootout. Rice and UTSA, not the greatest game. Rice, I thought, was a disappointing loser last week. UTSA is a 12.5-point favorite, total 48. What do you like here?
Yeah, Rice comes in as a 12.5-point dog. They covered against Navy, so people are pretty high on them, but then they turned around and lose to FAU. They did beat Charlotte. UTSA comes in, losing to Temple by 6. That's a game they should have lost. They beat Colorado State. I am a little surprised at how much they're favored here. They lost to A&M 24-42. They lost to Texas State as well. And now they come in as a solid 12.5-point favorite. Rice did beat them 29-27. Does seem like an awfully big line, especially with Rice coming off back-to-back losses with the brand new coach over from Davidson. Total sits at the last two UTSA totals were 58, and typically Rice totals are mid to high 40s. And this one sits at around 48. I think what happens here is probably Rice's strength is their defense, right? After giving up 27-21 points, they probably bounce back on the defensive side. 27 points is the most that Temple's given up all year. UTSA has given up all year to Temple as well. And I know this total sets at 48, but I like the under here between these two teams. Plus, it goes with that favorite under theory as well. Craig, UGA is on the road here against Auburn. UGA, of course, UGA could go in a free-for-all if they do not win this game, because they technically, outside of the Tennessee game, which is they were ranked 12th in the country, going on the road. If UGA doesn't win this game, that might not be a great situation for them, as they could start dropping pretty fast too. Auburn, of course, comes in after losses to A&M and Oklahoma, as the SEC is just brutal. But Auburn is playing better this year. Do note that UGA beat them 31-13 last year, but they're only a 3-point favorite now. That just shows you how much Auburn has improved. Who do you like?
Must win for Georgia, because next week, Ole Miss, the week after that, Florida. And the week after that, I think it's Mississippi State. So it's like, these are all. There's no where do you find easy wins in the SEC? You just don't. I think this is Auburn team. Give them a lot of credit that opening week at Baylor. After that, I just don't. I don't think Baylor's great. I think they're just an okay team. We saw that. I think Georgia's a really good team. I mean, Georgia played terrible to start that game against Alabama. They outplayed them rest of the game. Unfortunately, you got to play all the entire game if you're going to win against good teams. They didn't do that. I think they play entire game this week. I'm going to take Georgia. I'm going to lay the points on the road. Must win. Next, another SEC, 7:45 Eastern Standard Time. South Carolina at LSU. LSU's a 9.5-point favorite. Total 44. This is a must win for Brian Kelly. He's got a pretty tough schedule in front of him, as we talked about the SEC brutal scheduling. What do you like here?
Yeah, I agree with you. Must win for him. And South Carolina coming off a nice win against Kentucky. They lost to Missouri and Vanderbilt, which aren't bad losses. But LSU losing to Ole Miss, and they played really hard. They just fell short. But not all is lost, and that's the nice thing about these schools, especially these big Power 5 schools that make a lot of money and they schedule really hard teams. 2 losses does not take you out of the mix, right? And the schools are all happy because they continue to make more money. So what happens here, I think LSU at the end of the day, they're still ranked 11th in the country, which is not bad. When these two teams met last time, LSU won 36-33 in a close game. I don't think this is going to be as close here. I think LSU is going to be upset. Maybe they're hungover from that Ole Miss game, but I don't think so. I don't think they'll be hungover. But LSU sometimes has been pretty shaky. They only beat Clemson by a touchdown on the road. They only beat Florida by 10 as well. That's a little shaky. South Carolina, of course, only lost by 9 to Missouri, which I thought was pretty impressive. And they did lose their last road game. So kind of going back and forth here. I think the safer bet might be to take the under, right? LSU, of course, giving up 24 points, which, by the way, Craig, is the most amount of points they've given up all year. Prior to this, they gave up 10-7, 10-10, and now they've gave up 24 to Ole Miss, which is a fantastic offense, right? And I don't think South Carolina is going to score 35 points like they did last time. So I'm going to take the under here between these two teams on the 44. All right, Craig, BYU is on the road here against Arizona. On a total of 47.5. BYU, by the way, is 5-0, and they come in as the 18th ranked team in the country, beating West Virginia, Colorado, ECU, Stanford, Portland State, etc. This would be their biggest win probably. Arizona comes in off of a nice win against Oklahoma State. And as far as the head-to-head, BYU beat them 41-19 last year, but they're only a 2.5-point favorite on the road this year. Who do you like?
Love Arizona in this one. Arizona, their only loss is at Iowa State. For people that don't know, winning at Iowa State names is extremely difficult. And I think Iowa State is a pretty good team, especially at home. BYU historically great at home, struggles on the road. I just don't know who they beat so far. Like they really haven't beat anybody. This is their first test. Freshman quarterback. Give me Arizona plus the points. I don't think we'll need them. I'll probably sprinkle a little on the money line on this one as well. Next game, Troy at Texas State. Game that maybe is important to some, but not for most, unless you're betting it. Texas Tech favorite by 9.5, total 54.5. What do you like here?
Yeah, Troy beat South Alabama 31-24 and Buffalo 21-17, but they come in as a solid dog here. Texas State beat them 38-17 last year as well, so Troy does have revenge, but a lot of love here for Texas State coming off of a loss to Arkansas State, and they did lose to Arizona State as well. Texas State really hasn't beaten anybody, so this is a lot of points here, but a lot of respect coming in for Texas State as well. But Texas State obviously has a fantastic head coach, right? And we know about that, and we follow it pretty closely here. You have Troy here, who used to be Troy coach, Gerald Parker, who used to be an offensive coordinator. And Texas State, of course, has G.J. Kine, who's in his third year. He was the QB at UCF. He was a quarterbacks coach at Hawaii. So a lot of experience here. I think what happens here is that I can't take Texas State because Troy has revenge and they're playing pretty well. But what I do like is possibly the over. I think after a loss, you have a Troy team that probably is going to be, it could be an active dog in this game. You also have Texas State really mad at everybody from losing their last game. I can see this game going over the posted total, but not a huge lean one way or the other. Craig, New Mexico, 16.5-point dog to Boise State here. New Mexico losing to San Jose State last week by 7, and Boise State losing to Notre Dame 7-28. Who do you like?
We talked about sandwich games earlier. This is a sandwich spot for Boise. They played at Notre Dame last week. Next week, they play undefeated UNLV, which will go a long time to, who's going to win that conference. Give me New Mexico plus 16.5. New Mexico's better than what people thought. This isn't the New Mexico of like 3 years ago where New Mexico and New Mexico State were two of the worst teams, and it wasn't really close. This is a decent New Mexico team. They beat UCLA. Remember, that's why they made a coaching change. I like this New Mexico unit here to probably not win, but cover as Boise State's trying to just get to next week without any injuries.
Craig and I love doing videos for you every week. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you get all of our videos every single time when you post it, so you get the best lines. As soon as we post it, people jump on it. So if you want to get it as soon as we post it, like and subscribe.
Arizona State at Utah. Very good matchup here. I think Arizona State is just as good as they were last year. People probably still not talking good enough. And Utah, before Utah lost at home to Texas Tech, people were talking about Utah running the table and end up getting a bye potentially in the playoffs. And now Utah's going to need some, to win out probably, to be honest. Utah -6, total 48. Is Utah for real? That's the question.
Yeah, it's going back to Arizona State. They've covered 8 of 10 coming in. They beat TCU 27-24, covered that game, beat Baylor on the road as well, beat Texas State. Utah, of course, comes in beating West Virginia 48-14, upset after that loss to Texas Tech, who is undefeated, a top 10 team. And, Utah also went into UCLA and beat them 43-10 as well. Arizona State did beat them 27-19, so Utah is going to be ready for them this time around. Utah 48 points last game. Arizona State 27 points. Normally Arizona State games are in the high 50s, early 60s. Utah games, I would say around early 50s, high 40s. This one is slated at 48. Two really good teams. I think what happens here is that this game probably goes under the posted total. I like the fact that Arizona State has, obviously Utah has a little bit of revenge. Utah is going to have their only one bad defensive game against Texas Tech. Prior to that, they gave up 10, 9, 6, 34, and 14 points. Arizona State coming off back-to-back 24-point games. And, I think they're going to play their heart out as well. But I do like the under here. I also like Utah, too. Don't be surprised. But I do like the under here, probably a little safer. All right, Craig, San Diego State, 7.5-point chalk on the road against Nevada on a low total of 42. Who do you like?
This is a very good San Diego State defense. I mean, really, really good defense. They've given up 24-3-0 the last 3 games. And really, some of those against Colorado State they were up big and kind of, coasting late. Until San Diego State, someone really kind of, hangs it on them, I think you got to keep playing San Diego State. They're 4-1 against the spread the last 5 games. The only loss was kind of a shake your head, throw your hands up in the air, losing 36-13 at Washington State. I think Nevada is not a very good team. I'm going to delay the points with San Diego State. I would also lean towards the under, but the stronger is San Diego State in this matchup. Now, last game, Utah State at Hawaii. We call this the get-out game. Hawaii's favored by 1. It's at midnight Eastern Standard Time, total of 57.5. What do you like on the get-out game?
Yeah, Utah State is a 1-point dog, obviously. Utah State is 3-2. Hawaii is 4-2. Hawaii's played one more game. They played that early game. Utah State beat them 55-10 last year. Utah State, of course, losing to Vanderbilt by 20 points last game. But that's not a bad loss because Utah State was actually in that game. They were down 21-28 in that game, and actually I thought was pretty impressive. They gave up they posted 274 passing yards, and Vanderbilt just turned it on. But Utah State also beat Air Force by 19. I've been impressed with this team in general. They lost to A&M by 22 points, which is not a bad loss at all. I understand Hawaii comes off that nice win against Air Force. They beat Sam Houston State and Portland State and lost to Arizona. The question is, what do you value more? Do you value Hawaii with the massive revenge, losing 55-10 last year? Or do you value Utah State coming off of a 20-point loss to Vanderbilt? And I'm going to value Utah State off of that loss. Remember, Utah State returns key contributors, right? Brock Lane and Gabriel Iniguez. So they return their tight end and defensive tackle and their safety. And they have obviously a great new coach in Brocco Mendenhall, who got hired back in 2024. Hawaii, of course, is led by Timmy Chang, who's an offensive coordinator. But I like Utah State here, man. I think they're coming off of a bad loss where technically I thought they played really, really well. I just think they have the better goods here to face Hawaii, and I think that's why they're only 1-point dog. Utah State.
There we have it. Those are all the games for this week. Don't forget, if you haven't done so, hit that thumbs up, like and subscribe, all the stuff that you know that says that you like what we do. But the most important thing, you want to get on winners. People always say, they leave in the comments, what's your best bet? Very simple. Get on our best bets. You get 6 or 7 from IC. You can get 6 to 8 from me every week. It's $99 for the week pass. Use the promo code Taco Win 10 this week, and it's 10% off. So it's just $89. So make sure you get in on all those. And of course, if you want the free 60 for a new customer, the link is right here, docsports.com/ICCT. Check that out. All right, guys, have a great day. We'll see you again next time.